Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we are back with my main man Cop here doing yet another video in the series where we're introducing the dungeons at a high level to potentially new players like Cop. And today we're doing Underrot. So tell me a little bit about your what you know about Underrot, Cop.
I get lost and I aggro stuff that I'm not supposed to.
That's actually a great thing to start with because this dungeon has a couple big packs that if you do not pay attention to, you will aggro by accident, and it could cause a lot of problems in a dungeon group. So these packs are not insignificant things that if you back into, you're going to be in good shape. So we're going to get started immediately here. This dungeon is what I would call the most affix agnostic dungeon, meaning, there's sometimes where a dungeon is very easy and then very hard, depending on what week of affixes it is, usually because of fortified or tyrannical, but also because of other affixes. And Underrot, I feel like, is the key example where this works actually perfectly. There's almost no affix in here that could be really, really bad. In fact, I would say there's only two really harsh synergies, and one is being volcanic on the last boss, which is really odd to say, but volcanic on the last boss is actually relatively difficult because there's so many adds technically. And the other one is necrotic on the second boss, and that is because if you even get a single tick or two to spawn, it could be really bad. But other than that, this is a great dungeon to approach. If you have an Underrot key, you're not doing like a 20-something, count yourself lucky. It's a very easy key, very consistently difficult. So let's talk about that difficulty right now. There's a couple main things that you're going to want to know about the trash in here. It's pretty particular, but it's not, it's pretty easy to counter. Let's put it that way. A lot of things that happen, but very easily countered. So the first thing I like to do here is pull both this fetid maggot and the chosen blood matron. I marked them there. The two, I like to start with two together. Obviously, you can pull one or the other, but they're not that dangerous separately, and there's no reason not to open with a strong showing by getting two mobs. But what you definitely don't want to do is accidentally pull the ticks that I marked one of with the blue marker there, because those things are very, very dangerous, and that's going to symbolize our first pack that you really do not want to accidentally aggro. And it's harder than it looks, I'm telling you that. And it's because the blood matron and the fetid maggot are going to do things that are going to force you to kind of move. So the maggot is a mob that's going to appear a lot in this dungeon, so you're going to want to learn what it does. Basically, it only really does one thing, and this is a non-interruptible, but stunnable, of course, channel that does a lot of damage in a frontal cone. It's kind of like a big breath. You'll probably see it when we fight it, but it does a lot of damage, and it's only in front of the mob. So for me, I usually look at this as just move from it, but it's definitely safer if you interrupt it, stun it, use Ring of Peace, paralysis, grip it, anything like that, just to stop it from casting. And again, it's another one of those things that you want to let the channel, the cast itself, get to completion, and then interrupt the channel the first second you can. Not otherwise, because then it'll potentially just do it again. But this mob is probably a great example of this dungeon, because if you do handle the mechanics properly in this mob, it literally is going to do zero. It's not going to do a single thing to the group. It's so easy. It's unbelievable. But if you don't handle it properly, you're literally going to wipe. If it hits, if all 5 people were just stacked up in that breath, all 5 people would die. You wouldn't survive it. That's how much damage it does. But perfectly, you could just move out of it or interrupt it, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of the same with the Blood Matron. Blood Matron's a lot more difficult. It also has a purgeable, it's an enrage, so it's not purgeable, but Druid could de-enrage it. But she does another kind of like charges to a player and then tries to do a frontal slash. And if that frontal slash hits anybody, it's going to put a massive bleed on them, like a bleed for probably 200+% of their health, maybe depending on the key. So as Bloody Gaze is really good because you could easily grip it. You could also do it as like Ursul's Vortex, put one down, or even Ring of Peace, so it gets knocked back to you. But it's very difficult to keep it, like if you're going to fight it for a long period of time, it's going to do this mechanic. So you need to know that's happening, and you need to make sure when it's happening, you're not in front of the matron, because 100% chance if you get hit by this, you die. You will never survive unless you're going to bop it off or something like that. That bleed will absolutely destroy you. So I really do think this is the perfect way to open a dungeon like this. These two mobs that do effectively, I mean, the matron's a little bit more dangerous, but they do almost nothing if you just dodge the one mechanic that they do. And if you get hit by said one mechanic or you don't deal with it properly, you're literally just going to die to these two mobs in this dungeon, no matter what difficulty. So I usually grip it like this and then, put it down here. It doesn't really matter which one you kill first. The maggot has a lot. There's the Savage Cleave right there, and the Rotten Bile, as you see. So yeah, it's going to be the exact same timing a lot of the times. And there you see the purgeable rage, war cry, haste increased by 100%. Both mechanics happening again. Death grip, or anything you can do to stop either of them. But yeah, really, it's a good test of your group here, because if you can't handle the early trash, then things are going to get a lot more complicated later. This is a dungeon that has a lot of mandatory interrupts, a lot of almost rotational interrupts. If people don't interrupt properly later on, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So here you see what we just did here. Let's maybe make this a little bit more obvious. We ran from this rock here right to the pack there with the blood priest in it. We didn't pull the pack that's marked with blue, and we didn't pull the pack that's marked with green, okay? Keep that in mind, because these two packs of ticks always get pulled. I'm talking about almost, whenever you do a key with people who are inexperienced in this dungeon, is the big error that you see. And these ticks are no-go, man. You pull these, you're in serious trouble, especially on any type of fortified weak. They're going to do a lot of damage. Basically, when they die, they put it's almost like the mechanic, but the bursting mechanic, the affix. It's almost like that. When they die, they put something on you that's very dangerous, and these things die really quick. As you see, they only have 100k compared to 500k, and that's on 0. So yeah, just make sure you split the difference here. There's not really any, crazy ways to pull this trash. Just make sure you get it all together. The headhunters do a couple things. There's 3 headhunters and 1 blood priest here. The barbed spear is semi-dangerous. It's gonna, do some decent danger, but it's really not that big of a deal. Just kill this. This is a pretty good AoE pack, and that is the gift of. There's 2 things you got to interrupt on the blood priest. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. The gift of Gahoon, let's let that go off. You'll see it is now on this guy here, and he is unkillable. Blessing of Gahoon prevents death. Okay, he cannot be killed while this is on him in the last 30 seconds. So if you miss that interrupt, somebody needs to use a purge on that. Demon Hunter, priest, etc., shaman could do this, but the guy can't be killed. Like literally, we can't kill him while that buff is up. There's another mechanic which we'll, I'm sure, see on the subsequent packs, but that is going to try to full heal a mob too. So basically, we've already gotten into this part of the dungeon here where if people are not interrupting both of those mechanics, you're in serious, serious trouble here, meaning the pack might elongate for 30 plus seconds, or maybe closer to a wipe, because if it elongates 30 seconds and then heals the mob to full, that's a big problem. So now the next big thing here that you need to pay attention to is you're going to want to look down at the boss. You can see I have targeted Elder Leaxa. That's the first boss. But to get to the first boss, we have to take either the left or the right path. Now, the left path, as you see, has 2 blood matrons with this mask and the mobs around it. And then the right path, it doesn't have any blood matrons around it, okay? So this is the first thing you're going to want to do every time you do this dungeon. You're going to want to identify which path you're taking. You don't want to go left. You don't want to go to the path with the 2 blood matrons. You will not kill that pack. I don't care what difficulty it's on. That's probably the hardest pack in the entire video game. 2 blood matrons and that mask pack. No way. So you want to make sure you pay attention to that. Don't ever go the wrong direction, because at worst you're either gonna, or at best you're either gonna waste some time, or at worst you're literally gonna wipe to the trash and realize you made a big mistake. So we're going to be going right. Now, the big problem here is going right. It's pretty easy to aggro these ticks. So what I like to do is I like to kind of line of sight these up here, so we fight them up here, and we don't have any potential of fighting them with the ticks. And again, Savage Cleave, you're going to want to dodge that, as you see. And, oh, yeah, Cop actually got hit by it, so he's probably going to die from it, even on 0. That's how dangerous that mechanic is. It does about, yeah, it did a lot of his health. It didn't quite kill him, but anyway, Gift of Gahoon, we're going to let that go off again, and as you see, the Blood Matron is now again unkillable. And then the Blood Priest is eventually going to try their Dark Reconstitution. As you see, boom, full health. Although it didn't actually heal her to full. Maybe it doesn't. I always thought it healed 100%, but I guess it doesn't actually heal 100%. So either way, 2 casts, Dark Reconstitution, and Gift of Gahoon need to be interrupted. Very complicated if people are not paying attention, because there's also a regular, just a channel, like a regular cast. It's just like I think it's called Blood Bolt. It just does, damage to the tank, the primary target, no big deal. You should interrupt all spells if you can, but you don't really need to interrupt that because it's just regular tank damage. So now let's show this off here, because if you hug the left here like you should, you're not even going to come close to aggroing this. But if you kind of like go around the right, as you see, I barely even got close to those mobs and they aggroed. And it's actually they just bite you normally. I guess it's not even based on when they die. I'm not really sure exactly how this works, because you really don't want to be fighting these mobs. But long story short, they're going to apply a very, very dangerous dot. So again, just stay to the left side of this path if you're going right. If you're going left, you're so far away from that pack that you can't aggro it this way. But if you are going right, just stay to the left of this little this bridge, center of this bridge here. Okay. So now let's talk about this pack here, because this has potential to be a very, very big problem, and a pack that a lot of people used to like to skip with Rogan, all that. I was never a big fan of it because the first boss used to actually be really difficult, and if you wiped to the first boss, that was pretty much the key. You weren't going to be able to skip again. But now it's a little different. People don't really skip it, but I think that's a count issue. And the first boss is extremely easy. They nerfed the hell out of it a while back. So either way, you might skip this pack. But if you are going to fight it, just realize you have one of the most odd mob types in the game in it. And that's the Befouled Spirit. Literally, you're only going to fight this mob here. That's it. Doesn't exist anywhere else in the dungeon. The only mob type that you're ever going to see in this case. Literally just one off. And it's very, very dangerous. Long story short, it can be stunned. And the best way I like to deal with this is just take its mechanics out of play by just stunning it. Go open with, if you're a Paladin or a Death Knight, you can get a really nice single target stun. If not, you're just going to want to stun it in other ways to kind of interrupt its cast. But another thing, it's banishable. It's an aberration, so it can be banished. This dungeon has a lot of aberrations, actually, which makes Purification Protocol a very good option. This Underrot is actually excellent for Purification Protocol. But regardless, you probably want to banish this mob. If you're fighting this pack and it's any type of difficulty, there's any difficulty at all in the key, and you have a Warlock, just banish it. Warlock banishes it in that 30-second banish. The rest of the pack should be dead, and then you can kill the Befouled Spirit later. Really the only way you're going to get away from this, because all three of these mobs are ranged. You'll never really line of sight them away from the mob enough to actually get regular CC on it. The only other option, I think, would be Monk CC. I don't think Demon Hunter works on aberrations. It might, but I'm not sure. But either way, the big problem here is this Befouled Spirit. Very dangerous mob type. And it's going to be coupled with the Blood Priest. So the big issues here are everybody's focused on the Spirit. Nobody's interrupting the Blood Priest. The Blood Priest then puts the Gift of Gahoon on the Befouled Spirit, meaning it can't be killed. So then you have all kinds of mess there. It's doing its mechanics again. Or, even worse, the Blood Priest just heals the Befouled Spirit, which is even worse, obviously. So, yeah, very complicated pack. But if you just stun the Befouled Spirit and basically have your tank deal with the Blood Priest, you're probably going to be in good shape. So let's do some light damage here. I want to kind of show off the Befouled Spirits thing. But the rest of the pack isn't, there's nothing new here. So there it is there. Dark Omen. It's going to channel on a player, and it's going to do a lot of damage within 4 yards too. So if me and Cop were standing next to each other, we take more damage as well. It's on me. So basically, we just want to stun this and basically kill it in the stun. That's our goal. We just want to kill it, within about 5 seconds. You're also Harrowing Despair. It does a ton of AoE damage. If that gets off in a Mythic Plus, you are dying. You will not survive that mechanic. Dark Reconstitution as well. Again, Death Grip it, stun it. Interrupt it in any way possible. Just don't let these complicate this pack, because it's already complicated enough. So this is actually not a bad option, honestly, to use CDs here, because even though I would almost never recommend using CDs right before a pack on a first boss, this dungeon, this one here is not a bad option at all, because it's between you killing that mask within like a couple seconds of the stun being off or not. You're going to want to choose doing that, because the boss here is actually really easy. This is a really, really easy fight. It's one of the easiest fights in the game now. And this pack has the potential to be a wall. Like, if you don't deal with that mask, don't interrupt the Blood Priest, you will literally just wipe here all day. Okay. So let's talk about this first boss. This boss is literally just interrupt. Long story short, almost the only mechanic that you're going to have to deal with. There's some other things, but they're so telegraphed that they really shouldn't cause any problems for anybody. So the reason this boss used to be difficult is because the scaling that she used to do seemed like it was bugged. In fact, people basically, they did the time, they spent the time on it and you did the math on it, and they kind of proved that it was bugged. I love when the community gets together and does stuff like that, because it actually makes an impact on the game. Blizzard seemingly didn't know it was bugged, and they nerfed it. So now it does an even amount of damage no matter the key. At one point, it would be like if you did like a 20, you would literally just get one shot. The mob would hit you for 100% of your health, and basically you had to kill this boss so fast that you would never let a single interrupt go off and never take a single ability. That's easier said than done. made Prop Paladin and Resto Shaman very valuable. But still, this fight's only mechanic is interrupting. And if you don't interrupt a single time, your tank is still going to die, and other players might still die as well. You want to interrupt every single cast here if possible, but now it's not the end of the world. Especially as a Blood DK, very easy fight. And the main reason it's so easy as a Blood DK is because the ad that she basically copies herself, spawns a second set of ads, second ad itself, and that ad would also need to be interrupted. But as a Blood DK, I can just grip that ad. It's not the boss, so I can grip it, and I could also death Gore Fiends as well to stop it from casting a few times. It's pretty easy in general. But so actually, I should have mentioned this. In the past, every time she'd spawn that ad, it would spawn one extra the next time. So that's why it was so difficult, because eventually there'd be 3 ads up, and you literally couldn't interrupt them all, and that would be it. But that's been nerfed. Whole fight's very easy now. So this is a great fight. If you're playing a healer, you really want to do DPS here. There should be almost no healing needed. Literally, if the interrupts are on point, the tank is going to take 0 damage. She doesn't even really melee. Just cast over and over again. So as long as nobody gets hit by the 2 avoidable mechanics and the interrupts happen, this is 100% globals as a healer, as DPS. I've seen healers do upwards of 20 to 30k DPS on this fight, because every global they can dedicate towards damage, and that is huge. That is so big on a boss, especially during Bloodlust. So let's show the fight out. It's pretty straightforward, but there are a couple mechanics that you'll want to have seen. So I like to always open with interrupt as a tank, because especially as a Blood DK, I got my range interrupt, and it's just good to get it out of the way. So that Sanguine Feast, you're going to want to move out of that. If you get hit by that, as you see, Top got hit by it, puts a bit of a dot on you and absorbs healing. And then this creeping rot, it shoots out a green line from her, and that's literally it. That's it. The only 2 mechanics in the fight other than this blood effigy. As you see, it's targeting top, so we're just gonna go ahead and grip it in, interrupt it. Again, move from Sanguine Feast. Again, move from creeping rot. Blah blah blah. Just dance around the fight a little bit. Not a big problem at all. Very easy. Both bosses and the ad will be these mechanics though, so you got to be really careful here. And really, if you got hit by that as a tank though, you probably wouldn't even notice it. It does very little damage. Here, I mean, it does some damage, but not much at all. So that's it. It's pretty easy, man. This is probably the easiest fight you're gonna see, especially in here. The fights aren't really that dangerous, so really a good start to the dungeon, I think. You kill this nice and fast, and you're in real. Okay, so down here is where things start to get interesting. There's a lot of trash, and a lot of it is stuff you probably don't want to fight. Now, there's a couple ways that you could circumvent this, and I'm going to show you it right now. Basically, you can skip both of these packs. So typically, you would look at this as, I got to make a choice. Do I want to pull the pack to the left? With, again, the maggot, like I said, very dangerous mechanic if you don't dodge it. And then the ticks, which are just uniformly dangerous. Could be really bad on some weeks because of things like busting as well on top of that. Or do I want to pull the pack on the right with feral blood swarmers, who are a very dangerous mob? We'll talk about that. And again, another maggot. Which do you want to pull? Well, you could pull neither if you kind of line your camera up like this, as me and Cop are looking, and go straight here. I'll put a mark to show exactly what I mean. You start on green and go from green to purple, okay? If you go in that line, if you go any farther to the left, you will aggro that pack, and if you go any further to the right, you will just hit this wall when you get here, so you don't. At this point, you then have to make another choice. Do you want to wait and skip these lashers that are coming up, or do you want to just pull them as well? You definitely don't want to pull. I mean, I don't know. These living rots are like the easiest mob type in probably the whole game. They literally do nothing. That's another example where I think the scaling is bugged, but in the other direction. They do this cast. It's like a long cast, and it looks dangerous, but it just does like 10k damage somehow. So this situation here, we can literally just skip all of this stuff. Now that's not necessarily something that I would recommend, because then you're going to be really short on count, and you're going to have to fight packs that are definitely a lot more dangerous. But you see this wave of decay, even on Mythic, even on 0, it's doing like almost no damage. Literally not even taking damage. And that green stuff that I see actually caught posturing around, it's not even dangerous. Again, this mob type does almost nothing. It's really, it's kind of a weird mob type. But actually, I backed into one of these lashers. So let's talk about these lashers here. It's a very important mob type in this area. This area here is very unique, and Cop actually interrupted that ability, but it's very unique because there's a lot of different, it's like a melting pot of trash. You have to clear all of it. If you did this dungeon on like really easy difficulties, like on like heroic or something like that, or really low keys, you might have gotten away with not pulling all this trash in the past. But on Mythic Plus, you're gonna need to. There's no way you're gonna kill Krog Mob before he runs into trash. So you're going to pull 100% of this trash, and it's really odd because it's all in this circular area around the boss. Probably one of the only, I mean, I don't know of another room in the game that's like that. So, but yeah, let's go back and talk about what we did skip here, okay? Because again, you're probably not going to skip this 100%. We'll start by just going right back to the beginning here, and if I did pull, which I normally do, honestly just for count. If I did pull a pack, it would be this pack here. Okay, so again, the maggot, we've already talked about that. But the blood swarmer is a new mob type that's extremely important. And how it works is it's going to fixate a person, as you see, both are fixated on Cop right now, and it is going to follow him to the ends of the earth. He is going to be followed, and they're fast. They're not going to let too much distance between them. So best option is stun them, as he did there. You could use Ring of Peace to get them off you. You can grip them, but that's not going to really stop them. You could try slowing them, but they do this charge, and they're probably not going to get slowed enough to get to get it off the person. But the number one mistake I see in this dungeon all the time with this trash is basically exactly what Cop's doing now. Just running around in circles. You're not doing anything here. Just stand still and kill them. All you're doing there is making other damage dealers not be able to enter or not be able to keep on them as well. So that would be the first major tip I would give here for this trash. If you're fighting this trash and it's not being controlled, then don't try. You're not going to stop it. It's going to run faster than you are. It's going to charge. It's going to get to you. All right? So don't run. Just stand there, toe to toe, fight it. It'll be easier. It'll die quicker. There's really no problem. It's only really dangerous on super high, like really any dangerous, like really high fortified weak especially. That mob is going to hit really hard, and you as a damage dealer probably don't have the survival to stand toe to toe with it. But again, if you're just running around in circles, it's still hitting you, and nobody else can hit it. You know what I mean? So that's a major tip I would give. If you don't have serious control on that mob type, don't even try. It also has a very important interruptible cast, which we saw, but I didn't comment on. That interruptible cast is going to lock out any spell casting school. So if your healer is casting during that, you're going to get locked out. Obviously, you don't need to interrupt it. You can just not cast during it. It does a little damage too, but that mob type is pretty important. So another mob type that's also really important is the disease, the lashers that you see up ahead. So if we did come this right side, we'd normally pull this pack here. And these two mobs are particularly problematic because there's multiple of them. Basically, they only do one thing, and that is they try to put this extremely long stun on a player in your group. It's actually a disease, so it can be dispelled by anybody who has a disease dispel. I believe that's Monk. Is that right?
Poison and disease, yep.
Yeah, Monk and Paladin, I believe, are the ones who can get rid of it. Maybe Priest can too, I'm not 100% sure. But either way, whoever can dispel diseases, you're going to want to do this, because the only other way to remove it is to heal a bunch, basically. It puts this giant healing absorb on the player, and you have to either heal that off, wait 30 whole seconds for it to go away, or dispel it. The only three ways that you could stop it once it's on, or you can just interrupt. So I know it's not everybody's favorite thing, but interrupts on this mob is really mandatory. You don't have a disease dispel, that's going to take somebody out of a fight for 30 plus seconds, really. So it's really problematic when you fight the next pack as well, because there's three, and this is a great time to be coordinated with interrupts. So you definitely don't want to. I've seen people pull all five here and just kind of light them up. I wouldn't recommend that. They don't give that good count to risk it, especially because literally all five people can get stunned, and then you're just going to wipe. But yeah, really what you do is you'll see these weak auras that they mark targets, and then it'd be like, all right, I'm going to take the purple one. I don't really, have a preferred method, but just be aware that you're going to want to interrupt here. So you see Cop got the one, I got the other. Great method. Just make sure you don't blow all your interrupts on one mob. Could also be stunned for a second, so that's it. It's not going to get another cast off. It's dead. But yeah, either way, keep that in mind. And they're again in the area coming. Oh, I'm getting river. Anyway, they're again in the area coming up, so you're going to want to know this mob type. Now, like I said, a lot of the times I would just pull these pack, but it's really kind of stupid to do that now, I feel like. I don't really see a reason to risk it anymore. So if we did come this way and we pulled that patrol, I would then cut over and we just clear these three blobs here instead, because same count and they're just way less dangerous. Now at this point, this is a decision-making time here. Do you want to pull big here, kind of get the trash done quickly, risk a little bit of danger, or do you want to just go slow? A lot of people are going to really bemoan if you go slow. They're not going to be very happy about that, because the trash as an individual is not dangerous, but things can get really complicated. For example, you'll see This happens here all the time where you're going to see, I'm going to mark all of it. These mobs all together, okay, all of these mobs that I just marked here, you could very easily pull all 5 of these together, and you could very easily wipe to all 5 of those. Or you can just light them up really easily, keep them interrupted and stunned, and you would have a lot of count done very fast. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm going to pull just the living rot. Well, guess what? That's a waste of time. It's literally pointless, right? It's very easy. Okay, so then I'm also going to pull the blood swarmer. Okay, well now it's going to mean that the feral, or that the living rot is going to die much slower, because whoever's targeted by the feral blood swarmer is probably going to be running around in circles. Okay, well maybe now 2 mobs, that doesn't seem optimal. So now I'm going to pull the maggot. This maggot pats, by the way. You're going to want to get this at its apex at one point, because otherwise it's going to complicate your pulls. Okay, so now we have the maggot as well. Now the maggot is going to do that frontal breath, so we're going to need to dedicate a stun to that, or people are going to have to be really cognizant of it, otherwise they're going to get killed. It's just like there's a lot of things going on, and as you see, we back into another mob. Now we need interrupts on this. So you know what I mean? There's just a lot of things going on this trash, and if you deal with them properly, it's extremely easy. But if you don't, you're just gonna get walled off by this trash. It's just gonna wall you off mechanically. Like, you will not be able to deal with these mechanics if you don't actually prevent them from happening. But either way, assuming you do, I like to get a couple of the mobs on the left side too. We also would have gotten one of the lashers, but we actually backed into it earlier, if you remember that in the video. So normally I would get those 3, then these 3, and then we go right and we get the rest here. A lot of times, so you see these maggots kind of walking around. There's 3 maggots in this room, and they're going to patrol. There's an ideal time and place to pull them. You want to kind of get them at their apex at each moment, but don't worry about that if you're a new player here. Just pull lightly. You probably, this would be a good time. You can get the 3 back here with the blood swarmer, the living rot, which is very easy, and maggot that would be patrolling that we pulled already. But either way, I like 3 at a time. 3 at a time is kind of the main thing. It allows enough interrupts to be spread out without making absolute perfect plays to have it happen. You don't have to use things like stuns and stuff. And as you see here, so here's the fetid maggot coming here. So now we're going to have to pull 4. Again, 2 of the mobs are living rot though, so it's really not a big deal at all. But you're just going to want to keep somebody on the lasher. I'm going to stun the bite and the bile and make sure that doesn't kill anybody. And I'm going to interrupt flash there. So there you go. Basically, the pack is handled entirely by me as a tank. Tanks have a lot of ways to disrupt, especially with what you say with grips and everything like that. Also, there you go. Ring a piece or get option as well. Pop actually interrupted 2 different casts there. So that was really nice. Ring a piece is really good for this dungeon just because there's so many different types of mobs that are going to deal like very dangerous amounts of damage with casts. Now here's another dangerous pack here. These 2 together I usually pull. And again, this might be a real problem because they might split up. If you got 2 different range damage dealers or healers and they're in different areas of the room, you might see them just kind of split off in 2 different directions. Nobody knows which one's attack. So again, just don't panic. That's the biggest tip I can give here. Don't panic. The mobs are not that dangerous. As long as people kill them quickly and the healer is actually healing the person who's fixated, nobody's gonna die. You know what I mean? Maybe on like a really high key, somebody's gonna die, but it's really not that dangerous. People panic and really cause a lot of issues here. So, anyway, another pack with the rotten bile. Just want to keep it prevented. Obviously, the same pack that we actually just pulled before, actually identical in that way. 4 mobs, 2 of them are completely really not dangerous at all. And as long as at least 1 or 2 people are paying attention, you should always be able to lock it down. Good idea, have things like paladins, things like outlaw rogues, but a lot of stuns are going to make this dungeon. Also, great dungeon for prop pally, great dungeon for resto shaman. Get some extra values, other interrupts, especially in a dungeon like this with so many different tasks. Okay, so we are at Krogmaw, but it's not been 10 minutes since we pulled Leexa. Very, 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 very common. You're going to lust on Leexa, and you do not have... It usually takes about 7 minutes to get here. A lot of times you might wipe. If you wipe, you're obviously going to take longer. So, but if you get to this point and you do not have Bloodlust, do not pull the boss. Go on, do more trash. I famously, at the beginning of Season 3, forgot about Krogmaw because we were doing low keys just to get gear, and we had like... It took us only like 4 minutes to get here, so we had like 6 minutes to clear Lust. I went and cleared the 3rd boss and literally forgot Krogmaw. Got to the final boss and we couldn't enter the room. And I was like, why? What's going on here? And then I realized I forgot a boss. So not ideal, right? But anyway, yeah. So
have fun running back.
What's that?
I said have fun running back at that point.
Yeah, not ideal. Not you don't guys don't do that. Okay, don't skip Krogma permanently. Anyway, these mobs are actually harder than they look. The individual guardians are going to put a shield on themselves, which is purgeable and interruptible. Either one, you're going to want to get that off because it's up to a lot of damage taken. And then the fallen death speaker is actually extremely dangerous for the team. They put this magic, kind of like a magic. I don't know how to describe it, but I think it is cleansable. It just keeps putting it back on. But it is good habit to at least, purge it at least once or whatever, dispel it at least once. Otherwise, this is a really good pack to kite. This mob pack is more dangerous than it looks. But quickly target down the death speaker, especially if you're the tank, you can interrupt with the stun. You could also just control undead here. So raise dead also is going to aggro another mob. It's going to spawn another mob. So as you see, it's got this big shield. 200k absorb. I mean, when the mob has 500k health, that's a big absorb. So obviously, you're going to want to deal with that. There it is there. Wicked Frenzy. As you see, it's going to put this dot on me. It's a lot of damage, and it's going to last even after the cast is over. So, easily AMS. I mean, very good for Bloody K again. You could also mind control and get it, But yeah, it's a lot of things to interrupt here. A lot of things to purge. A lot of things to stun. This is really the best dungeon, I think, in terms of, interacting with trash. Like, if you do it well, if you dominate the dungeon, then you're going to crush it. The key is going to be so friggin' easy. But if you let these mechanics get the better of you at times, they're going to cause a lot of problems. So usually at this point, we're getting really close. We're usually under a minute left for Lust. But still, I like to pull this mob. So before we do, well, we actually did already. But before we do, this Death Bolt needs to be interrupted every single time it casts. If it doesn't, it stacks up. Okay, so the way I like to pull this mob type is just open with stun. Just open with stun. It's going to be stunned for so long, nobody will accidentally interrupt. That's the big thing you're trying to avoid here. You get to this mob, everybody knows you need to interrupt every single one of those casts. 5 interrupts out of the gate. You know what I mean? It happens all the friggin' time, and then you're in serious trouble there. So I like to stun out of the gate because it's going to be you're not going to DR the stun, and you're not going to risk anybody actually interrupting. Like, what I mean to say is, don't even stun to interrupt the cast. Just stun the mob, period. So it can't cast for a couple seconds. And, that kind of like, oh, I got to interrupt kind of thing, and people will settle down, and then they'll play it a little bit cooler. Okay, so we're now at Krogma, who is a pretty infamous boss for a couple reasons. I would say the main thing you got to be aware of here, though, is soaking these little bugs. All right, the boss is going to, multiple different mechanics are going to spawn these little bugs on the ground. When you run over them, it steps on them, and it removes them from the encounter. If you don't, after about 10 seconds, they spawn a mob. That mob is effectively the tick mob that we saw early in the dungeon. It's going to put that bleed on you, and again, with Necrotic on Krogma, it is a nightmare. As a tank, you are done. You're going to be in trouble here. Not going to be able to drop Necrotic with that many mobs on you. So, as a damage dealer and a healer and a tank, really every member of this party, it is your job to step on these bugs. It is not somebody else's job. It's not, oh, they'll handle it. Oh, or I'm the healer, I'm too busy. No, you're going to do this mechanic, okay? Especially as a Windwalker DPS here, a melee with a lot of mobility, this is a very easy job for you. And it gets complicated when he does this tantrum. The bugs are going to be all over the room. Basically, the entire circle of the room are going to have some bugs on it. This is when it really shines. Having Demon Hunter, Monk, Warrior, they can get really far away from the group. Basically, the group's going to be all together. So it's going to be like y'all 5 of you might run in one direction. That's a time where you want to use an ability like Heroic Leap, Roll, whatever the Flying Serpent Kick. Just put yourself away from the others so they know that's your area. You're going to handle that part. I'll go somewhere else. But if you fail to soak many of these bugs, I mean, literally, if you soak 0 bugs, you would just wipe. I don't even think, honestly, on 0, I think we might. I don't even know. I'm not sure. I don't know what difficulty would be so low that you wouldn't wipe to not soaking a single bug. But it's actually a really easy thing. You just run over them. People just don't do it. The other thing I should mention on this boss is that this is a very, very, very dangerous boss on a really high key. Not very dangerous on a low key. It's not as big of a deal, but you still want to have lust for it. The reason that's the case is because the tantrum is extremely dangerous. It's physical damage, and it requires movement during it. Like, the boss is running around. You can't keep up with them. And as a healer, you're going to be stressed because everybody's going to be spreading out. You're not going to be able to heal with, like, chain heal very easily, stuff like that. It's going to be harder. So, this is actually, healers that I know consider this one of the hardest bosses in the game. Maybe first, second, or third hardest boss in the game on a higher key. Because if you're not prepared for it, you're just gonna die. You're literally not gonna be able to heal through the damage. And then there's a level of key where preparation isn't even enough. You need to prepare and be fully maximized during it. So if you're healing this, just be ready to rotate your CDs. You're probably gonna get about 3 tantrums on a real key. You know, with Bloodlust on a lower key, you're probably only gonna get 1 or 2. But if you see 3 tantrums, you're gonna need a big CD for each of them. Again, things like Spirit Link, it's gonna be difficult to use. Let's put it that way. So. Let's go ahead and kill him, and we'll see how it goes with just 2. But you'll see probably a lot of the issues that you're going to see. Oh, one other thing I should mention. The boss's tank mechanic is actually avoidable. Basically, the boss is stationary during it. It will turn side to side, but it cannot move. It cannot move from its location. So if you just run away from it, if you're at least probably like 10, 15 yards away from the boss, you won't get hit by it. It's got a frontal cleave kind of thing, and you can just run out of it. Now, as a Bloody K, this is very difficult, and I've actually been like complained at because I don't run out of it. But you really only have one tool to do that with, and that's Death's Advance. And I feel like Death's Advance is much better used to clear the ticks, for me at least. I don't have any problem surviving the actual the breath thing that he does. But if you're doing like a 20 or something like that, you're probably not going to survive on a Tyrannical. So if you're a tank, let's talk about the options. Prot Warrior, very easy. You could, I'm pretty sure you could probably spell reflect it. But second of all, you can literally just heroic leap out, easy. Charge back in, easy. Demon Hunter, probably the best at it, because they can just Inferno Leap or whatever, got out and right back in, very easy. Monk's probably very good at it too. They can just roll away from it, roll right back in. Bear, not as good, but you could use a Stampeding Roar or just dash in a cat form, get out as quick as possible there. And then Prop Pally, you can literally just bubble it. I mean, I wouldn't even run as Prop Pally, but you could use Horse if you need. Pretty easy. But so anyway, that mechanic again, on low keys, not really going to be dangerous at all, but on really high keys, it's going to be extremely dangerous. It is nature damage, so AMS is huge. Definitely, if you're Bloody K, AMS every other one. You should have AMS for every other one for sure. You might actually have AMS for every one, but if you get it 2 back to back, you're not going to have it for the 3rd one. That's just how it works out. So keep that in mind. But anyway, let's go and kill the boss because it's not probably not going to be that bad on 0, but you'll see some. Again, Lust on the pull. Never wait on this boss because Lust is only going to last as long as the first. Basically, so there's the indigestion as you see AMS at 100% of it absorbed. That's because it's so low. But anyway, then we're going to clear the blood, the little ticks here, and it's going to happen during indigestion. It's also going to happen tantrum. It's also going to happen the charge here as you see. Much more out. The charge, you just want to make sure you don't get hit by. As you see, we actually did a pretty bad job. We want to bait the charge into a wall, so all the little blood ticks are near each other, and we don't have to run too far. So that's why you usually fight it by this bone pile, because it's stuck on this bone pile, and you won't be able to put ticks everywhere. He's usually gonna he's gonna do 2 charges every time, and then he's gonna run a tantrum. Okay, at 100 energy, he does the tantrum. So it's gonna begin now, and currently.
Beware.
There it is. Okay. Anyway, so tantrum, tons of AOE damage, as you see. He's basically doing tons of physical damage, throwing ticks all over the world. Not gonna be able. There are that many. We're not gonna be able to get these. As that shouldn't be a problem on 0 boss almost dead. The good thing is once the boss dies, these ticks go away, so you're not actually gonna have to deal with them. They don't stay. So pretty good. But yeah,
good example of how the ticks can become a problem if you don't clear them, though.
Oh yeah, I mean, dude, did you see that was just the tantrum mechanic. We had like 2 from the charge right before the tantrum, and then we soaked probably maybe 10% of the tantrum, and there was still like what 15 ticks on the screen.
Oh yeah.
So you can't do that. I'm telling you guys right now. You do this fight and you let more than 2 or 3 ticks go off every time, just forget about it. It's over. You're not gonna survive. 0 chance. So it's a pretty hard fight if you're not ready for it. At this point, you can make the decision to go left or right here. Right has less dangerous trash, but it's a higher volume of trash. So if you need more count, you probably want to go right. And if you need less count, you probably want to go left, regardless of the danger. I like to always go left because how my route works. But if you skipped a bunch of the stuff that we talked about being potentially skippable early, you're going to need to go right here because otherwise you're going to be searching for count at the end, and you really don't want to do that. Anyway, so let's assume we're going to go left. The right pack is just identical pack to what we fought right here. The skeletons with the death speaker or whatever. There's again another death speaker here, but it's much easier to deal with when it's dealing with mob. This Defiler is a new mob type, very important mob type. It does a couple different types of casts that you really want to be aware of, and Withering Curse is the first one, as you see. While it's channeling, it is stacking up a damage reduction. Like, we're not able to do as much damage, and we're also taking more damage. So you definitely need to interrupt that. That will absolutely ruin your group. It's not actually that big of a deal. So 2 more casts. The Spirit Drain Totem, you can just move away from. If it hits you when that Spirit Drain is off, you're going to get stunned. That's really a big problem. You don't want to get hit by that because you're going to take a stun. And the other one is another Shadow Ball Volley type mechanic, which, you know, again, if you have a bunch of Withering Curse stacks and you get hit by that, you're probably just going to get a one-shot. But as you see, you know, 60% damage reduction. That's not good. You definitely don't want to let those casts go off. And there's only 1 mob here, but they're going to be in higher supply coming up here. And 2 of them are going to be here, so definitely you want to interrupt that because it's just going to make the pack die slower. It might not cause you to die, but it's going to make the pack die way slower. And then again, on the way here, there's going to be another worm. You'll always see it with his blood here. So I am literally going to stun as soon as possible. You know, as soon as it's up fully, standing up fully, I'm going to stun. And then I'm always going to get the first interrupt. I like to get that interrupt very, very, very quick, so nobody would. Basically, what I'm trying to do there, I got a pug mentality. I'm thinking they're going to react to it instead of be preemptive. They're not going to expect it, and they're going to just smash their interrupt, and we're going to waste them. So I'm going to get it off so quick that nobody can even react to it in time. That's what I'm thinking. But, you know, it's regular group, just interrupt. Now, 2 defilers here. Again, you're going to want to have some people interrupt one, some people interrupt the other, and just move from the totem. The big thing is that totem, it's more dangerous than you realize. Do not let that totem hit you. Run away from it. You don't need to interrupt that cast, though. Putting that totem down is fine. That's a wasted cast for that mob. It could have done a lot worse. Okay? And just move from the totem. So we'll see it here. We're going to have some trouble interrupting, which is... But either way, just make sure you interrupt the channel, because if that gets the full channel off, you're in serious trouble. The Shadow Ball Volley you can easily survive, but the channel is not. you don't want to do that. That's going to kill your time on this hacker. And then again, you could grip on it, stuff like that. Move from the totem. Very easy overall, but again, another mob type in here that if you do not interrupt, stun, etc., you're going to be in serious trouble. Okay, Spore Caller Xancha. This is probably the one that I see players make the biggest mistakes with when they're doing on low keys. They're not ready for this fight, and this is a fight that you really need to know the mechanics on. So a very straightforward fight mechanically, but a very dangerous one, again, if you mess up. So basically what the fight does is it's going to put a ring of mushrooms around. As soon as the fight begins, there's going to be a ring of mushrooms around. Okay, these mushrooms, basically, if you run into them, you're going to expel the mushroom and you're going to get a dot on you. Okay, this dot is relatively dangerous, but it's only 1 stack of it. It's not a big deal, but it does stack. So if you ran through every single mushroom, you'd have like 25 stacks. Just get 1 shot by a single ticket. Can't do that, obviously. So how do we get rid of the mushrooms? So the mushrooms last, and then he breaks them. Basically, he does a mechanic that he breaks all mushrooms and does a big AoE portion of damage. At that point, if the mushroom gets broken by his mechanic, it will put a dot on everybody who gets hit by the mechanic. So how do we get rid of the mushrooms? The main way is use the tank mechanic. He's going to do it's like a frontal cleave. Another one of these mechanics that you can actually run away from. It's a lot harder this time. Probably don't want to do it unless you're 100% sure. I actually have a video on exactly how to time it. It's very difficult as Blood DK, very easy as Warrior, blah, blah, blah. But if you don't know exactly what you're doing, don't do it. Because if you turn this boss at all, he will kill another damage dealer. A little bit different than Krogma. Krogma is a much bigger mob. You can easily run backwards. This guy is much harder to run backwards because this room is so small, and he's so small in general. If he turns even a couple degrees, you might not hit any of the mushrooms, and you might actually kill another player. So don't do it unless you're 100% sure you're doing it. But otherwise, it's just a physical hit of damage. Use the defensive every time, and make sure he's hitting multiple mushrooms. So let's illustrate how this might look, okay? So I'm going to actually use this little area here to emulate the room. Okay, so the boss is at Skull, okay? And there's mushrooms. Let's just say there's going to be mushrooms all around the area here. You want a green, there's going to be one at Moon, there's going to be a couple at Orange, and there's going to be a couple at Yellow. Okay, they're just going to be all kind of like clumped together like that, okay? Those are the mushrooms. So what you want to do is, as a tank, boss is on Skull. It might not be obvious. You might just think, okay, I'm just literally going to back him up here. And I'm going to have him hit whatever, you know, he's going to hit orange. He might clip purple. We cleared 2 mushrooms. That's as best as I can do. No, you're wrong, okay? This is how you want to do this fight. You want to take one mushroom out. So I'm going to stand on this. I'm going to tank him. Like, the boss is going to get dragged over to Moon. All right, I'm going to clear Moon, get a stack. Moon's now gone. And then I'm going to turn him so he's facing this direction here. So he hits all 4 of these. You understand? So you hit as many as possible with the tank mechanic. This is a very big deal because there's another way to clear it, and it's a DPS mechanic. But lo and behold, the DPS don't like to do this mechanic very well because it forces them to run away from the boss and go stand by mushrooms that they don't really care about until they kill them, okay? So as a tank, you really want to do the brunt of the work here. You want to make sure you hit as many of those mushrooms with the pulverizer or whatever it is as possible, and then let the DPS fill in the gaps. Another option is, of course, you could just run through them and dispel. I've seen a lot of people do that. A monk will just maybe pop a light defensive and just kind of roll through 5 or 6 of them and then install himself before he takes damage. That's an option. Pretty dangerous, pretty aggressive. I wouldn't recommend it, but it is an option. Another option is if you have a Mistweaver monk, you can literally soak none of them, and then as soon as he does the damage, just use revival and clear all the stacks. That's an option. Again, pretty aggressive. Wouldn't recommend it. Another option is have immunities. Do it, and AMS works, so I can AMS and run through 6 or 7 of them, and I won't even get the stacks, but they'll go away. Pally's really good. Rogue's really good for that as well. But if you're not actually going to get rid of the stacks on yourself, you really don't want to clear these on purpose. But if you have to, like if there's 5 up and he's about to break them, you need to get them. Somebody needs to get them, because if one person gets 5 stacks, they'll probably die. But if all 5 people get 5 stacks, people are leaving the group. Let's put it that way. That's it. The dungeon's over. You know what I mean? If you wipe here, you're in serious trouble. So very straightforward mechanic. The DPS portion that I was talking about is literally just go take this mechanic, stand it next to a mushroom, and it's going to break that mushroom. The cool thing about that is it's got a projectile, like a travel time on the mechanic. So the farther away you are from the boss, the less time or the more time you have to move away from the mechanic. If you're really close to the boss, you're going to get hit by the mechanic as well as the mushrooms get hit by it, and it's going to do a lot of damage. So ideally, again, you'd run as far away as possible, and this is facilitated by having the tank, to kite him the way I talked about. So let's show this off. We'll see probably a couple of mechanics. But right out of the gate, I'm already looking for these big blotches of mushrooms. This is actually an amazing spot. I can easily hit probably multiple. I probably need to soak that one, but I can easily hit multiple. Let's see. Okay, so I didn't get as many as I thought. I thought I would have gotten that one too. I could have gotten them a lot closer. But as you see, I have the DPS mechanic too, so I'm obviously not going to run, but it's on cop as well. And again, you see, we're very close to the boss, so there's no way we're going to dodge that. But, I just failed the shockwave there. So we got a lot of freaking mushroom stuff. You know what I mean? We need to kill this boss. We're never going to do that with this many mushrooms up. A lot of options here. So ideally, we'll break, so cop's going to go to that big one there. Yeah, that's perfect. Hit all of those. Get as close as you can. Good. Going to break all of those. Excellent work. And now we're going to just probably get killed. I mean, you're going to get killed. I'm going to be fine. But yeah, anyway, as you see, the man has 14 stacks. That's too many stacks. I think it's a wise way to say it, but he just dispelled himself, so no big deal. Again, you can do that, it's only a disease, so not a big deal. Again, as a tank though, you would never really have this mechanic. It is a knockback, so you could use Death's Advance on it for some reason. You do ever get hit by it, but as you see there, you just really want to make sure you're hitting as many as possible. Dodge these balls as well. They come out every time he does the mechanic, shockwave mechanic, and they'll put a stack on as well. It's actually a pretty straightforward encounter mechanically, but it's very easily failed. And if you do it wrong, you're just gonna straight up die. There's no way, unless you literally dispel it. That's the only way. So, 2 shockwaves per phase. This time we got everything but one, so I can usually just stand in this to protect my main man cop there, so he doesn't take any damage. Dodge. And again, just dodge the balls. That's it. Pretty straightforward. What do you think?
Neat. It gives me flashbacks to Aldir, though.
I have never seen this form
Trying to
of
dodge those gray balls.
Yeah. A lot of very similar to Cahoon, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's like 2 directions you can go here. I don't know why you would ever go left. I've literally never seen anybody go left. I think there's just way harder trash there. It is an option, but I think you're just going to be way over count. Just be aware. You're almost always going to go right here. You want to skip this mob. This mob has a lot of health, and it's a pretty dangerous mob type, so you don't need him. You're never going to need him count-wise. And I like to pull both the worm that's going to spawn here and then the the defiler here together. For the sake of this video, we're not going to do that because we won't be able to interrupt them properly. But, you don't have to do that either if you're really worried about it. You can just come down here, and again, I'm going to stun immediately, so there's no possibility we're going to waste our interrupts. And then, the first cast you're going to have to interrupt. The cop's going to get it. Boom, look at that. He failed it. No big deal. Anyway, Defiler is going to also, like I said, it's going to be difficult to not pull these together. So you're going to want to probably pull them together and get both of them killed. But at this point, we're pretty much good on count. We got a lot of trash ahead of us, and we don't need it. So what I like to do is then hug the left here. I'm going to show you how to skip. But if you do need more count, now's the time to get it. These worms isolated are actually really easy. And this worm here to the right is a really safe bet. It's not going to aggro anything else. There is this faceless corruptor walking around. And there's a pretty decent chance that I guess you might have aggroed this one here. So let's talk about that mob type, okay? This is actually a really heavy-hitting mob type. And you really want to make sure that you know what's going on with it. How it works is he does two mechanics. He summons these tentacles, these purple tentacles, very like opaque purple tentacles that come out of the ground. They're then going to slap the ground nearest direction to a player. So let's say if the mob is at the skull, okay, and Cop's where he is, and I'm over here, okay, just stay there, okay. We're kind of separated from the mob a bit. Purple tentacles are going to spawn. All right, one's going to spawn it where I put the purple marker, okay. Well, we're both equidistant to it, so it can slap either of us. I don't, maybe there's some notice that you'll see, but one way or the other, it could slap either of us. So if this is the case, just move away from it. Just move the opposite direction, you know what I mean? To make sure it doesn't slap either of us. But typically that's not going to happen. So just say both of us are, here, stay there. Both of us are stacked up, okay? It's now definitely going to slap one of us, okay? So you just move to the left or move, to the right, one way or the other. Just move away from it. Just be aware that it's always going to try to slap at a player. And there's going to be a couple of them. There's going to be like 3 or 4 of them, okay? So whenever they spawn, just look at where the player is with respect to them and just move to the opposite side of them. Okay? It's easier said than done. But I had this happen a couple nights ago. I did this key, and we had all 4 spawn directly next to a Shadow Priest. Like literally, this is textbook. 4 tentacles all on top of each other, right next to one player. The easiest dodge that there's never an easier dodge. They're usually all spread out, and there's players all over the place. 4 all right next to one player, he gets hit by them. One shot. I mean, the dude got hit so hard. I think Chris Metzen called him and said, "You're gonna have to quit playing World of Warcraft." That's how hard that. You don't get hit by them. Just move. He got hit by all of them. So don't make that mistake. It's a very big mistake. On top of that, he also does a mechanic, frontal cone. It's a fear. If you get hit by it, you get scared. You're so scared you can't play your character for a couple seconds. Shamans can help with that. No need to be scared if you got a shaman, or you can just dispel it. Or you can just move. Show you're brave. Brave like me and Cop. Come in here, don't get feared, okay? You're going to fight a couple of these mobs. You're going to want to know that mechanic. If you get feared, you're going to aggro more stuff. You're going to get feared. You're going to be so scared, you're not going to have your senses about you. You're going to run into other mobs. Don't run into other mobs. Don't be like Cop. But anyway, okay, so we're going to pull nothing here, okay? You can pull this pack. Another similar pack that we've talked about with the Guardians and the Death Speaker. Try not to aggro this pack if you can. Best way to do that, hop up on this little mushroom or whatever this is. Hug around the side here. Don't fall into that. You're going to be in trouble there, and you're going to fall. You're going to have to run back there. You're going to aggro that mob. Just hug the side here and get up here again. Pretty easy. All right, pretty easy. Now, this is actually awesome. Here, I'm going to show you. You can actually skip all of this. Hop this little fence here. Quickly hug the right here. Hug as hard as you can, and you literally skip all of this. I'm talking about we just skipped probably like 10% account right there. That is really nice. This guy comes up. He's like RPing or something. Don't worry about him. He's not going to aggro anything, okay? Now we just got 2 mobs here, faceless corruptors. We're going to aggro both. Again, you're going to see, this is the first time we've actually shown them in the video, but you're going to see these mechanics. A frontal cleave, that is a fear. Abyssal reach is the tentacle. Maddening gaze is the fear. You could interrupt it with death grip, as you see, a couple tentacles. Don't get slacked, all right? You're going to die. Maddening gaze, don't get feared. You're going to pull other mobs, okay? Again, really good. Gore Fiends, stun, or you can't actually stun, but Death Grip, knockback, stuff like that will prevent the cast. So if you feel like you're in any danger, just go ahead and use it. But you see how this tentacles work. One right next to me, watch. It's gonna slap me. Look at that. Cop move from his, no problem. He's fine. Now you have to have 100% count before you don't move back up, back up, back up, back up. Back. You have to have 100% count before you can go down there. If you don't, the door will not open in Mythic Plus. In Mythic 0 and Heroic and stuff, it's going to open regardless, obviously. But also, you have 100% count, but you haven't killed the third boss. It doesn't open either. Found that out the hard way. Anyway, so regardless, provided you're done with the dungeon, you can now go down. This is just to prevent you from getting stuck down there, effectively. But a lot of times you're going to get here and you're not going to have 100% count. So the best option is to just pull. Hopefully, you're going to not need much more than this one mob here, because this mob is a real pain. You don't want to fight more than this one mob. But again, I'm going to stun the mob, same mob type that we talked about. This used to be one of my favorite things in Reaping, because this mob type would spawn this really funny looking mob that you can control undead, and you can get a really cool mob as a pet. But you know, obviously Reaping's gone, so no big deal. Now it looks like there's a mob over here. Right? There's not normally one here. No. But anyway, that's that. So ideally, you won't have to pull this mob as well, because if you do, pretty good chance you're going to run into the Corruptor as well. But you can, not a big deal. Just same deal, just kill it mad quick. And hopefully, you know, the Corruptor's not going to complicate this pack. And then if you have to pull that pack, you're definitely going to face the Corruptor. So you probably want to isolate the Corruptor. Pulling those two together is actually pretty dangerous. And it's actually the scenario that I described earlier where the guy... We were fighting the Tentacle and the Corrupt at the same time. The guy probably just wasn't paying attention to the Corruptor. But again, very dangerous mob type. As you see, got a lot of health too. 800k compared to 500k in 0. So you're going to notice the difference on a high key. But that's it. That's the dungeon. The trash is actually, like I say, really easy. It's probably the dungeon that I think... That and this and Motherlode. The trash is very, very, very dangerous if you mess it up. But it affords you a lot of opportunity to not mess it up. So just don't mess it up. So now we're down here with the last boss. It's gonna take a couple seconds for everybody to get down here. It takes about like 5 seconds for that little kind of like RP that brings you down here. So just, you know, I like to do a 5-second countdown no matter what. Some people like to go rush through the boss, but this boss has a very important mechanic that we're going to talk about here before we pull it. All right. Basically, long story short, there's going to be a lot of gray stuff all around the room. Don't stand in that gray stuff. Very dangerous. It's going to spawn these little spore ads, these little balls that kind of float around. They have 1 health. Literally any damage. You could hit them with Death and Decay and break thousands of them if there were that many, you know. You can Gore Fiends them all together, drop an AoE, they all go away. Okay, that's an option as well. But literally the best option is just have basically a hunter type ability, barrage, any type of multi-shot, something that's going to hit multiple targets easily without a lot of global investment. Just drop an AoE, anything like that, and break a lot of them. You want to break a lot of them, especially on Volcanic, because like I said earlier in the video, they can all spawn a Volcanic. So you might have like 10 plus Volcanic fields coming up at once. Could be a problem. You have to stack on this fight though. This is the main thing. This fight's mechanic is a mess if you do not do it right. If you do it right, it is so unbelievably easy. But if you do it wrong, it is an absolute mess. I'm talking about, my God, is this fight annoying if you don't do it right. It's actually the exact same mechanic from Rixa from Motherlode. In the previous video, we talked about this in Motherlode. Basically, he does a mechanic that is going to shoot out certain, like a gray patch near a player, effectively. Not necessarily on a player, but near a player, okay? So what you want to do is, I'm going to draw a little diagram with colors here, okay? So here's the boss at Skull, okay? The boss has already begun, so we all stack in front of the boss, okay? He's now going to put a gray patch right on us, okay? So what we're going to do then is we're going to move the boss in this direction, okay? And we're going to you're going to have to move him, so he's going to be facing where I am now. But then we're going to turn him, okay? We're going to turn him back towards the patch that previously dropped, and everybody's going to stack. Okay, all 5 people. Not the range. You're not immune to this. You don't get to just stand out in the corner and not do this. You want to stack as well. Everybody wants to be in front of the boss. With respect, the boss turned to the previous patch, okay? You do that, he's then going to put another bunch of patches here, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to move the boss, you're going to bait, and you're going to go around the room in a circle in that way. You do this, this fight is an absolute joke. If you don't do this, there's going to be gray stuff all over the room. If you take even a single tick of it, you're going to be you're going to take a lot of damage, and you're going to need to really start running around in a very frantic pattern to get this boss out of this mechanic. This is another important fight mechanically because you need to stack for this golden circle thing. Basically, he puts this dot on every single person, and his golden circle mechanic clears that dot. Can also be dispelled as magic. It's magic. You can get rid of it as the healer. Cast a spell if you really need to, but the golden circle dispels it. So if people aren't stacked, they're not getting dispelled. You're an idiot. Just stack. Don't be selfish. You know what I mean? Stack up. Do the fight like it's supposed to be done, and it's very, very, very easy encounter. The other thing you'll notice here is the boss cannot be damaged. Okay, he absorbs all damage and converts it to blood energy. That's a weird encounter. But anyway, once that bar reaches 100, meaning you've done, however much, I don't know, however much damage is needed. I don't actually know, but however much damage is needed to fill the bar to 100, he then spawns 2 ads. Okay, these 2 ads deal damage to him when they die. So you're killing the ads, and then the boss is taking damage that way. So you need to kill 3 sets of 2 ads. So that's 6 ads total. The good thing is, this dude here, Titan Keeper Hezrel, he kills them for you. You don't even have to kill them. You can make it go a little bit faster if you really want to, but you shouldn't. He does more damage than all of you combined will do to the ads, for sure. He hits them for probably 10% of their health every second, or maybe even less than every second. He hits a lot of, very, very hard. So what you do, just ignore them, okay? You ignore 5 out of 6 of them, okay? Once you get to the last set and you got one, you get the one that he isn't targeting. Rip that one in, taunt that one in. You kill that one while he's killing the 5th. That's the maximum way to do the. No reason to kill the other ones. He's going to kill them anyway, and you're doing damage to something that doesn't need to die by your hands. So always focus the boss for 5 or 6 ads. When the 3rd set comes out, look at the one that he targets with his channel beam, and then attack the other one that's not being channeled. Kill them both at the same time. Boss is dead. Okay. So a lot to go through, but it's very obvious when you see it. So let's go ahead and look at it. I'm sure we'll see plenty of mechanics. So just start the boss here. No reason to really fiddle with him. Whatever direction he's facing is fine. Really good fight to Lust. You want to have Lust here. You definitely don't want to Lust on the 3rd boss. You want to Lust here instead. So here's Vile Explosion. Wait a couple seconds. Wait till he shoots out the gray stuff and then move. Okay, I'm moving the boss. Now I'm going to turn him again. So as you see, our back is to the gray puddle. We're going to stack up with this. We're going to remove the debuff here. And he's going to do, we actually killed him so fast here. It doesn't really matter. Also that circle clears the puddles. So basically you want to have him as close to it as possible so you can clear some of the puddles as well, just in case things get complicated, alright? It can be complicated again by things like quacking and volcanic, but it's not really that big of a deal. Always wait a couple, wait until the channel is started. If you run too soon, it's just going to go where you were instead of where you ended up, and that's that. Again, we're going to stack up. We're going to clear the thing. As you see, a lot of these are, what are you doing? Stack up in front. So we messed it up. So you always want to be in front of the boss. Now we're in serious trouble. That's just throwing it all over the room. So that's actually a great example of the mistake that you cannot make on this fight. If you make this mistake on a serious key, you're in trouble. Very serious trouble. Now we're going to have to run, as you see, all over the place. Not going to be able to get him back to the position. Now we're literally just going to be running for probably 20-30 seconds because of that one mistake. And again, when these spores die, they summon they put the gray puddles on the ground. So you just want to clear them out. Any range damage is going to work. Wait a couple seconds. Here you go. Vile Eruption. That's it. Take no damage from it. Very easy. But yeah, if you don't do it right, you're going to be in serious trouble. And the room is going to be really compromised. So, but anyway, the fight's over. We got one ad up. This one is not being killed by the Hezrel. He's killing that one, so we're just going to target this one, kill it really quick. And that is that. Fight it.
Engaging final safeguard. Destroy
So what'd you think?
It's like interrupt the dungeon.
The Titan bought us time,
Yeah,
but
pretty
the
much.
Harpoon will not
The
stay
trash
contained
is
for
very
long.
interrupt driven.
We must
Again,
gather
if
our
you did
forces
like a
and
no
stop the
interrupt
water at
challenge,
its source.
this would be the hardest dungeon in the game, I think. I don't know if you could even do it. Every single mob in here casts really dangerous stuff. But really, I think the bosses are the thing that you need to execute the best, because the trash is so easy to stop that most groups, like if you're new and the other 4 people aren't, you're not really going to have to worry about it too much. Just be aware of the interrupts. You need to know what you're interrupting as well, because there's a lot of casts on these mobs that are not needed to be interrupted, and there's wasted interrupts if you do interrupt them. But really, the big thing is the bosses. So do you have any questions on the bosses? Because I think maybe this last boss confused you a little bit.
Yeah, I got a bit confused about that last boss. I think it's just getting used to the constantly being in motion and when to move around, back around to this back, and because there's only two of us, I lost track of you there for a second, and that's when I made the mistake, because I thought I was on top of you and I wasn't.
Oh, always in front of the boss. Yeah, just look at the boss. You don't even need to look at the tank. Provided the tank does this, of course. If the tank doesn't, then all bets are off. But the tank should do this. Should always drag the boss, turn him, stack right in front of a puddle of gray stuff. The yellow circle that comes out will clear some of the gray stuff. So the new gray stuff goes and kind of just overlaps about 30% of the window of the previous gray stuff, and you're just kind of shimmying around the room in a circle, clockwise almost. Just keep the pattern even. So by the time you get to the end of the kite, the boss is over. And the big, like I said, major error there, being in front of the boss. The other side of the boss made the boss turn towards you, and then he breathed in the kite path. We just wasted about probably 40 yards of the kite path, spread the gray stuff out all different directions. We had to go way around that to get back into the kite path that we wanted. And by the time we did that, it took so long that he did it again. So we had to go even further. By that time, the gray orbs are now piling up. They're in front of us instead of to our left, which is basically, if you did this right, they'll all spawn. They spawn from the puddles of gray. So if you did this right, there would be gray puddles, say, starting here and going here, and then going this direction here, and then going here. You know what I mean? So basically, they're always behind you if you do this right. If there's no puddles in the middle of the room or in front of the kite path, they'll always be behind you. So we'll be turning the boss, and basically, I'll be turning the boss here, and I'll be dropping D&D behind me to kill the ones that are chasing us. You know what I mean? But in that case, when we mess it up, there's ones coming from different directions. Like they're coming from over there. You know what I mean? They're coming from over here. So we can't kill those. They're in the way. But that's the mistake.
Yeah, I see it. Reminds me of a couple of different fights, actually. Like Ashbane and that one when you had in King's Rest with the totems.
Yeah, it's similar. There's a couple fights out there, but I think Rixa is the one from Motherlode. It's almost identical. She can only put it in places where the players are, and if the players are in the right spot, the fight is trivially easy. And if the players are in the wrong spot, the fight is extremely complicated, to the point where you're literally frantic. Like you're like, I gotta run like 60 yards, quickly run. Oh, he did it again. Now I gotta run another 20 yards. Like it's just a mess. So
yeah, I see exactly what you mean by that. Yeah, so
the biggest noob mistake in here: don't pull trash. Don't aggro stuff you don't need to pull. Don't aggro stuff you don't want to pull. Don't aggro stuff early. People do this all the time. Don't run around in circles when the freaking little spider bat thing is chasing you, okay? You're going to aggro trash. You're going to get the mob, like it's going to be living longer than it needs to be. So just stay calm, follow the path. Don't aggro extra ticks, don't aggro extra packs, and interrupt. That's it. Very easy dungeon.
Absolutely. It's
All
a
right.
lot less harsh than it seemed to begin with.
Yep.
Okay.
Good one.
I think that's it. I'm gonna say take care, everybody. Any questions in the comment section below? Peace. Cop out.